Hello, everybody. It's good to see you again. It's been a while since I've done a live stream. I've been busy doing various things, and I just felt like I really wanted to just have this time to catch up. Um, I realize it's short notice, as always, so I wonder how much of a live stream it is. Um, well, as I live my life, I have certain events happen, or I learn something new in psychology, or in morning meditation, something comes up. So I have all these ideas, and I thought I would just catch up and share. I think probably there's two major events, and one involves the passing away of my mother in law, who was like a second mother to me. In some ways, I don't know, sometimes it's easier to be closer to someone else other than a relative. And I'm not putting down my mom at all, but I think you know what I mean. She was very kind, compassionate, sensitive soul, very sensitive. And I think with sensitivity, there's a burden that you can kind of worry a bit. And so I kind of related to her that way. Um, about a year ago, she was diagnosed with cancer. So she passed away, but I consider pretty somewhat in pain, but somewhat peacefully. And so we had some good time. I'm thankful for her life and the influence she had on me. And so her name was Peggy, dear Peggy. And so we're still, um, that was July 5th. On a different note, I'm going to share um, the screen here. I'm proud to announce that my daughter had a baby. Um, Her name is Willa Grace, and very, very excited. This happened all on Friday. Oh, sorry. You can see I'm glassy eyed there. my my dear um, granddaughter who's 3 days old. I'm going to share another photo here. I'm doing what grandparents do is they get really excited, and so they share um, there. And I'm going to talk about her, which I'm going to talk about psychology relating to a newborn. This really brings up old feelings of being a parent, having children, the vulnerability of how we come into this life. We're so vulnerable, we're so small, we're so dependent upon other people to take care of us. And the love parents have for their children is like beyond description. It starts off that way. You just have all this instinct, all this this love. In fact, it kind of goes beyond your own love for your children to the world at large. Um, and God being our parent ultimately has so much love for us. We grow up and then we start to want to do our own thing, and then we have our struggles. But in that state of innocence, in that state of very simple life, sleeping, eating, hold me, hug me, change me. But we learn so much about the world. We learn, is it safe? Will caregivers pick me up when I cry? Um, is it safe to explore and to learn and to grow? Babies don't really make mistakes. It's beyond. It's not even beginning to be critical thinking and um, analyze things and worry. I do like, I do laugh a little bit when they say, "Oh, I slept like a baby." Oh, does that mean you wake up every 2 hours? Yeah, I think the phrase sleep like a baby refers to sleeping without care. So contrast this to adulthood, where we fret, we worry, we future trip, we hold grudges, we do these things that are just, it's kind of like our soul sickness. We're afflicted with it. And there's a Bible verse that Jesus is talking about. We must become like little children. I've always meant that to be like children that were sitting on his lap, but perhaps even being simpler than that, like a little baby. I was also pondering how Jesus came into this world as an infant. How vulnerable is that? Dependent upon his mother, Mary, to take care of him, and Joseph. And even at 3 years old, needing to get up and flee because of, what we'll say, politics. Interesting. Yeah, so today, so I'm just very grateful. That vigilance of, okay, here's another psychological lesson. Uh, we think we're in control, and science and medicine is great, but really, babies are born when they want to be born. Yes, we can induce labor, but it's only nudging it some. We can't make things happen, and we have to let go of control. Another life lesson is how painful it is to give birth. That I can't even begin to imagine what it would be like for women to give birth to children. But I think from what I've heard, there's parts of it that go, this can't be right. There's something wrong here. There's the pain, the suffering. Um, it can't be right. But then, as it's described to me, they have the baby comes out, and that separation begins to happen, and the joy, they're flooded with joy and tearful, just joyous. And I really don't think it's just about pain and then lack of pain. I think it's something mystical happening where life is coming into this world. And now, where we were carrying that child in utero, is now that child has become more separate, part of a family. I believe the personhood starts with conception, but there's this sense that there's even more person. They're not two anymore, they're three. And that child has a great influence on this family. Such a little one to change everybody's schedules, to sacrifices made, as it should be. It's so different. It's what I called baby time, baby schedule. It's just whatever the baby wants, the baby needs, and that's appropriate for that kind of development. Um, yeah, yeah, and now an adventure begins. It really does begin. So switching gears, but not too far. Um, I want to talk about Mr. Rogers. Those of you who know me, I just really have a fondness for Mr. Rogers. As I was in a difficult childhood, and I mean, I don't need to go into all the details on a live stream, but it was, I'll just say, to put it mildly, difficult. It was difficult in that the people that raised me, my parents, I'm going to try to get a, I'm trying to make sense of this. Um, mm, I'll just do this one, I guess. The people that raised me, I know loved me deeply. I shouldn't say the people. That's my parents loved me. They worked really hard with what they had, and because we're all fallen and broken, there were challenges, and so as a result of that, um, I would have been really lost, I think, without somehow seeing Mr. Rogers talk on the TV set as though he's talking directly to me. How strange is that? I mean, that's kind of weird. I lived in the day and age where, don't sit too close to the TV set, you'll go blind. And um, like, how do you have a relationship with the TV personality? But I did. He said what I needed to hear, as I think so many people need. And I think he was quite misunderstood. I think that there's times when, and I've done my share in my early adulthood or teenage years, kind of, oh, Mr. Rogers. But um, the things he said were so, it's weird. It's like we reject it or we see it as hokey. We see it as, I don't know. I think what happens is because of our fallen state, our disease, we reject it or we think it just feels so foreign to us to have someone tell us that we're special, that we matter, and to talk about difficult things um, in such a way where it's simple. There's something very valuable about his style, which was to make things very simple. So I'll speed up my talk a little bit here. Um, I'd say about 3 or 4 years ago, I started watching um, some episodes of Mr. Rogers. My wife had cancer. She's doing better. She had thyroid cancer, 3 surgeries. It was a challenging time, and it was about the time that the movies started coming out. The first, and I'll link this all in the description, but the first movie I saw was Mr. Rogers and Me. And if I was better skilled and prepared, I would tell you the name of the people who did this and all that. But I'm just going to say a guy because I don't remember his name. But he and Mr. Rogers were neighbors in a Nantucket Island, and he worked at MTV as a journalist. And he said he was celebrating his 30th birthday, and he had taken a nap from the busy time of getting there, and then he hears Mr. Rogers' voice. Well, are you our neighbor? And wakes up to find Mr. Rogers. Um, they have a conversation, and Mr. Rogers shares a concern that we have traded deep and simple for shallow and complex. And this gentleman goes, oh my gosh, that's my life. I just deal with the shallow and complex. And it planted strong enough seeds that he ended up doing a documentary on his life. And it's so profound and stunning that is, I think, what we suffer from, is we are doing things that really don't amount to anything, shallow. It's not the important stuff. I'll just say some of us are afflicted with this. And it's complex. Everything is so complex, it's wearing ourselves out. It's wearing ourselves out. Children, it's simple. Taking care of a baby, it's hard work, but simple. Good. Thank you for asking that. Yeah, I'm going to get to that, Jojo Siwa. Hopefully, I'm saying your name. This person shares. Why did I call it the power, of Mr. Rogers? I'll share that in a minute here. Um, a depth of relationship is, I think, what we're longing for. I think we want to be close to people. We want to be loved deeply. We want to be matter. We want to matter. We want to have worth. Our needs are pretty simple, really, but no amount. And I like lattes. I treated myself to a special drink my sister gave me, a gift card to Starbucks. I was saving it up. I turned 62. I was 60 and on last Tuesday. These things are fun, but is it really going to provide what we're looking for? Okay. And simple. If we can keep things simple, it works well. And so I do think I'll dovetail into that. I think that's what the power is. He kept his show very simple, slower, not a lot of fancy technology or design. Everything in the documentary, "Won't You Be My Neighbor?" It said that it's everything that you wouldn't expect from a TV show. You just wouldn't expect it. And why was it so effective? And why does almost everybody know who Mr. Rogers is? And why do they almost remember the songs? Because the songs were simple and they were deep. Mr. Rogers, let's talk about other power here. Mr. Rogers testifies before Congress, before some tough senators that had been looking at cutting all of public TV during the Nixon administration. They had just gotten it funded and it was just starting to be a thing, and they were going to cut it. He had listened to testimony, and they just didn't want to hear any more reading and all that stuff. So Mr. Rogers, you can tell he's nervous. He's very young, and it's so worth watching this. So worth watching this. And I'm going to try to link it to the long version. There's a lot of snippets, but the long version. And he talks to this gruff senator and just shares simply why it's important that TV and media is a very strong medium, and it's going to have a huge influence on children. And this is something Mr. Rogers was really concerned about. In fact, in his life, he felt like he kind of failed because in reality, there's more violence and stuff on TV that it kind of won. There's really very few good stuff. But he earns $20 million just by having a conversation. And he quotes a song. What do I do with the mad that I feel when I feel so mad that I could bite? What do I do with the mad that I feel when nothing I do works out and nothing seems right? I can go to that, and I'm misquoting some of this, but I can go to that place deep inside where I can choose to say stop. I can think about something else to do instead. Okay, and it goes on. Like, that's deep. It's simple. How the world would be different if people could do that, especially now when we struggle with such anger. If we could go inside and find the skill, and he ends the song, the poem, with how good we feel afterwards. If we could do something different rather than just be driven by these passions of anger and greed and whatever. Something else Mr. Rogers was really concerned about was how kids are really being just seen as consumers. That kids' TV and cereals and food and stuff, all marketed to children just to make a dollar. And that's really kind of morally wrong. And he pointed it out. He's very strong about that. And some of us are oblivious to it. We don't even think about that. We know it's somewhat bad, but to really realize there's preying, these companies are preying upon children. Really wrong. So that's why you won't find much merchandise associated with Mr. Rogers. That's not what he's about. But the power of Mr. Rogers, well, the power he had was personal power. And I was challenging people about this. And hopefully it won't step on, well, I don't know if it steps on toes, but let's use Donald Trump or President Trump or President Biden or any other political leader and ask the question, who has more power? Mr. Rogers or Donald Trump or President Biden or some other political leader? And I'm critiquing political leaders here because it seems like they lack the skill to be influential with a lot of people. And did a lot of people follow these people based on wanting power or anger or whatever? They think that they're going to solve the problem. Mr. Rogers seems to not even be concerned so much about politics. Social issues, yes. He was very, very powerful in terms of dealing with racism back in the 60s, where African Americans were being shunned out of pools and people pouring like acid. It's horrible. And so what does he do? He actually has an episode where there's an African American Black gentleman who is the police officer, and it's a hot day, and he has a little wading pool, and they stick their feet in together. And Officer Clemens says, well, I don't have a towel. And he says, oh, that's fine. You can share mine. It's like very smart, very, very smart. Everything with Mr. Rogers was very calculated. And he was a prayerful man. He spent 2 hours a day in some kind of prayer and spiritual meditation. He swam every day. The influence he has on people, I think, was much stronger than these other political figures that will come and go. When people met him in person, whether it was a journalist or just people, they all said the same thing. They said that Mr. Rogers made them feel like they were the most important person at the time they were with him. And Mr. Rogers would say this, which may sound hokey, but he would say things like, do you know what the most important thing I'm doing right now is being with you? And people didn't doubt that. They didn't say, well, he's just saying that to be kind. No, he actually radiated that. And that's why a lot of people get tearful of Mr. Rogers. I hardly run into anybody who does not like him or love him. There was a story I'll post it on the internet of a girl has seizures. And this only came out after his death, how a lot of times these things happen. This poor girl is afflicted with seizures, like 100 a day. It was pretty bad. Ben Carson, the famous neurosurgeon, was going to remove half the brain. I think that's what it was. And this girl was young, and her mother noticed that she was talking to Mr. Rogers, like on the TV set, saying this, Mr. Rogers, I'm afraid that if I die, my brother is not going to have anybody because I'm his best friend. The mother was heartbroken and thought, I'm going to call Mr. Rogers. Oh, no, I'm going to write to Mr. Rogers to get some kind of photograph or some kind of little thing. Well, Mr. Rogers calls her on the phone. And again, people, when they say Mr. Rogers is on the phone, it's like mystical, like they're shocked, like Mr. Rogers is calling me. And the girl had to have the surgery, and Mr. Rogers like became friends with the mother and the girl right then and there. And I think there was a visit, you'll see it for yourself. But then the poor girl goes into a coma. And Mr. Rogers, I think, calls a lot to see how she is. And then Mr. Rogers, in my opinion, guided by God, says, "You know what? Can I come visit her at the hospital?" And he says, "No media. This is just between me and her." So he shows up there with his puppets and begins to talk with the puppets. And she doesn't come out of the coma right then and there, but eventually comes out and gets well. And you got to hear this story. There's another person, a gentleman who, and it was in college. His grandfather had just passed away, and he's on the internet. I'll link that in the description, where he says it was a tough time. He had just learned of this, and he's flipping through channels, and then he sees Mr. Rogers, and he watches Mr. Rogers. Okay, so fast forward a little bit. Mr. Rogers is in an elevator, and this guy just happens to be in the same elevator. He's kind of like stunned, and Mr. Rogers says in Mr. Rogers' voice, "Are you one of our neighbors?" And this guy says, "Yeah." And he says, "Well, do you have time to talk?" And like this gentleman says, you can't believe it, but he feels like this is the most important. He felt so valued, so important. Um, and Mr. Rogers, I think, told him point blank, talking with you is really, really important to me. So where does the power, like, how does that help? Because people that want to judge Mr. Rogers saying, well, we helped develop a bunch of narcissists. Yeah, that's just not true at all. Our problem, if you want to develop narcissists in your child, ignore them. Basically, neglect them. Be too busy to be on your cell phone or all kinds of other things. Because what happens is that poor person is looking for attention um, constantly. A healthy form of reflection, which happens at about 3 years old, when we'll say little Tommy goes, look, look, I'm on the swings. Oh, honey, that's cool. You're on the swings. You did it. Or I made these blocks, into a tower. Oh, that's so cool. Well, if there's no one to reflect back to them their state, of their joy, their excitement, or their sadness, or their sorrow, they're looking for it forever. And so it's neglect that causes this, not too much attention. And then it causes us to have undue attention, where then we fight for attention, which then makes us tend to repel against someone who's constantly looking for that attention. And the newspaper reporters that seem to jump on this, again, fake media, fake news, but saying he did this and this. Yeah, no, if you watch his shows, you will see that there was this idea of personal responsibility for your actions. His song, You Got to Do It, he talks about just not wishing, but you got to do it, just do it. Um, Things take work, things can be difficult, but you can get through it. He didn't see children as little adults. That's why he talked the way he did. He saw them as quite special. But he didn't not he talked about difficult things, like the very first week they were talking about assassination of Bobby Kennedy and how to deal with that. Very powerful. This is going to sound weird, but I have to use the restroom, and I'm a human being. So I'm going to run to the restroom, and then I'll come right back. Okay. That sounds like a Mr. Rogers thing to say, and that I'll be right back. Well, I am back. Yeah. How strange is that? I'm not going to waste too much time talking about just needing to be a human here. Um, but this idea, Mr. Rogers, when he said people are special, and I've done my jokes about being special and some of those, but why do we make fun of that? Why do we? I think it's because it may be true that we really need to feel loved. And so special could be loved, appreciated, like we matter, that I'm different in a good way, like I'm not a number. I'm not just a statistic. I'm a real live person with likes and dislikes and um, gifts and talents, things that I'm good at and things I'm not good at. And I have my own unique sufferings, things where I've been let down. Um, yeah. Um, where I've been let down. Just, but each human being is created um, in such a way where we're not all alike. We're alike. A lot of things are alike, but some things we're not alike. Um, I'm going to share a video. I'm going to see if this works. So I'll do my best to see if it works, and we'll live through it. I might have to edit it out if it doesn't work. Yeah. I'm just going to share. Oops. Share screen. And this is a video of Daniel Tiger and Lady Aberlin. I'm going to put it on here. Lady Aberlin. And Daniel Tiger is one of the main characters. He's nervous, he's shy, he's frightened, insecure. You know, he's kind of like a Charlie Brown character, which again, well loved because we identify with. But I think this is stunning. This is like if something's good's coming from TV, it's from this. So without further ado, I'm going to just play this. It's about 5.5 minutes long here. And then we'll talk about it.
You know something, Lady Aberlin?
What, Daniel?
I've been wondering about something myself.
Something about Mr. Skunk?
Something about mistakes.
What is it?
I've been wondering if I was a mistake.
If you were a mistake? What do you mean, Daniel?
Well, for one thing, I've never seen a tiger that looks like me.
No.
And I've never heard a tiger that talks like me.
No.
And I don't know any other tiger who lives in a clock.
No, neither do I.
Or loves people.
Oh, Daniel.
Sometimes I wonder if I'm too tame. Sometimes I wonder if I'm a mistake. I'm not like anyone else I know. When I'm asleep or even awake, sometimes I get to dreaming that I'm just a fake. I'm not like anyone else. Others I know are big and are wild. I'm very small and quite tame. Most of the time I'm weak and I'm mild. Do you suppose that's a shame?
Oh, no.
Often I wonder if I'm a mistake. I'm not supposed to be scared, am I? Sometimes I cry and sometimes I shake, wondering, isn't it true that the strong never break? I'm not like anyone else I know. I'm not like anyone else.
I think you are just fine as you are. I really must tell you, I do like the person that you are becoming. When you are sleeping, when you are waking, you are my friend. It's really true. I like you. Crying or shaking or dreaming or breaking, there's no one mistaking it. You're my best friend. I think you are just fine as you are. I really must tell you, I do like the person that you are becoming. When you are sleeping, when you are waking, you're not a fake, you're no mistake, you are my friend. I
wonder if
you
I'm
are
a
just
mistake.
fine as you
I'm
are.
not like
I
anyone
really
else
must
I
tell
know.
you, I do
When I'm
like
asleep or
person
even
that
awake,
you are
sometimes I get
becoming.
to dreaming that
When
I'm
you
just
are
a fake.
sleeping,
I'm not
when you are waking,
anyone
you
else.
are my friend.
Others I know are big and are wide. I'm very small and quite
Crying
tame.
or shaking or
Most of
dreaming
the
or
time
breaking,
I'm
there's
weak
no one
and I'm
mistaking
mild.
it.
Do you suppose that's a shame?
Best friend.
I wonder if
You
I'm
are
a
just
mistake.
fine as you are.
I'm not supposed to be
I
scared,
must
am
tell
I?
you, I do
Sometimes I
like
cry and
the
sometimes
person
I
that
shake,
you are
wondering,
becoming.
isn't it true that the strong
When you are
never break?
sleeping,
I'm not
when
like
you are waking,
anyone
you're
else.
not a fake.
No, I'm not
You're
like
no mistake.
anyone
You're my
else.
friend. I think you are just fine, exactly the way you are.
The way I look?
Yes.
The way I talk?
Yes,
The way I love?
especially that.
You don't think I'm a mistake?
You're the tiger I love most in this whole universe.
Oh, thanks, Lady Aberlin. I love you too.
Watch anytime on the PBS Kids.
Okay. Wasn't that cool? Very powerful. Why is that so powerful? Well, how many of us struggle with that? How many of us, one of the scariest, I think, feelings we can have is feeling alone, feeling like I'm not like anybody else, that I'm going to be rejected. I think that's why public speaking is so scary for people, because I think people think they're going to be rejected. And I think that's the root of why we're so afraid to share our feelings, afraid to share our vulnerabilities or our weaknesses. We got to be strong. And then if we are strong, notice he said, I feel like a fake, because we don't really know the real me. I think 12 steps is powerful because it encourages the sharing of our real selves, even if we're feeling like we could be rejected. But then when we're not rejected, we feel better. Kind of, it de-shames us, if you will. And then what's brilliant is it's not enough for Lady Aberlin to just sing it and then everything's fine. No, it's like Daniel the tiger, striped tiger, struggles with the voice inside his head that's still singing the negative song while he's hearing the positive song, but it's still a struggle. And that's kind of how life is. We get to choose. One thing we do have is the choice to listen to what we want to listen to. And the sooner we can learn that, the better. Now that I'm 60, I can be more bold. It seems like I get to decide, like, hey, I'm not even listening to this. I think it's good to listen to, I was talking with someone earlier today, negative feedback, so we can embrace what's useful and what's not useful. Because some of us might be defensive and we don't want to hear anything negative. But I think some of us hear so much negative that we can't function. Let's talk about this critique of people that I think, in my opinion, misunderstand Mr. Rogers. The critique is that if you tell everybody they're special, or it's this newspaper article that talked about snowflakes and stuff like that. I just don't think they get that he never meant to say we're more special than anybody else, but we are all special. And it takes away this competitive drive in us to try to better ourselves against someone else. And I saw this in one of the videos. He said that he feels like the worst thing another human being can do to another human being is to make them feel less than who they really are. And I think there's some truth to that. I mean, there's obviously abuse and hurting people physically, but you could do that. And if they somehow leave with, well, that was twisted, or what you did to me was wrong, but I don't feel less of a human. But see, that wound that somehow I'm less than human is the problem. It's what leads to the defensiveness, that I can't face myself. There's something really deep wrong with me, so I can't even deal with any of this. But and another critique is, if you tell people I love you the way you are, well, then why grow? Why change? Why evolve to something better? It doesn't seem to work that way. If people feel like you accept them where they are right now, that they don't have to improve to be okay, to get even just a zero. It's like if someone's feeling like in debt, like in human debt, like I don't even feel good enough to be human. And not everybody struggles with that, but say like you do, then all our accomplishments, all our bragging and trying hard and manipulation to get people to love us is because I just want to feel normal, we say, or at least zero. Even if we say, well, the person's really narcissistic and trying to be better than everybody else, that's still this compensation for feeling less than to begin with. And my personal opinion is that it's from the fall, mankind, that it's a spiritual problem, that Adam and Eve had what they needed to be okay. The serpent comes and tempts them with this idea that says, you're not actually good enough. And God says, if you took from the tree the knowledge of good and evil, then you could become like him and you would have knowledge. And that was tempting to them because it tricked them into thinking they didn't have everything they needed. As soon as they partook of that, that's when shame entered. It says that. They ran and hid. They weren't okay. That's when they saw their nakedness. Why? Because this is a theological lesson, but the glory of God that surrounded them, their glorified body left. And ever since then, now we've been trying to satisfy that need to be okay with brilliance, power, money, sex. All these vices, all these problems really stem from this. And I don't think Mr. Rogers is suggesting you could just tell people they're okay and lovable. And in and of itself, that was going to be enough to solve the problems. He was an ordained minister, a Presbyterian minister. So in his theology, and you can read this in the books, that this love, just as we are, comes from God, this unconditional love. And that's the starting place. And this works with clients. It works in my life. If I know someone really loves me, accepts me right where I am, it's a good starting place to move ahead. And then I can do these things. And certainly, if you wanted to study all his songs, certainly he was about improvement, about taking responsibility and working hard. You'll see it, and learning and growing. So this is the thing where people just look at something from the surface and say, oh, he was just, yeah, no, you actually have to watch the shows. And when you watch the shows, you will be shocked, actually, how spiritual they are. And how it's a message we need right today. This, I think, we need this kind of message, that we are loved, that we're okay, not that we're perfect or don't need improvement, but contrast that with the message of you're not okay. And so, like addiction recovery, what I may be doing is not okay, for sure. And it may cause a lot of pain and suffering, and there could be all these consequences. But if the starting place is, I love you, you're a human being, I've been there with similar problems and fears and struggles and angers and mistakes, it's a good starting place. Look what happened. In theory, a bunch of broken people getting together in a group where there's no money, no president, shouldn't work. And where their character defects are often very critical, judgmental, resentment, fault finding, all that stuff, egomania. I mean, it's just right there in the books. But it works because ego deflation, getting rid of self, is helped by acceptance. And so a colorful phrase is you can't save your face and your ass at the same time. Mr. Rogers was not about saving face. That his demeanor helped people let down their guard. Yeah, that's what he did. He certainly helped me a lot. I've been influenced by him. I was going to share another photo here. This is what I called my Mr. Rogers photo. That, yeah, not that I look like Mr. Rogers, but that was a shirt and tie and what is it? Sweater. And when I look back and say, oh, that looks like a Mr. Rogers look. How interesting is that? That's my kindergarten photo. And other influences, it's kind of interesting. I ended up being a vegetarian for most of my life. Mr. Rogers was a vegetarian. Ended up being into having a puppet. This is so strange. I only just put two and two together. My sister was crying. We were on a vacation. I grabbed one of my dad's socks, slipped it on, and started going like this, and she started to laugh. And then we added eyes immediately with a Sharpie, some kind of pen, and I called him Lamb Chop. Lamb Chop developed into a personality. And in my broken, dysfunctional family, Lamb Chop could get away with saying things that I couldn't say. It wasn't so overt, but it was strange. He had his own personality. So maybe I coped, similar to Mr. Rogers, who projected different personas. If you watch the show, you'll see that Lady Elaine is really a rascal, talks totally different than you would think, and says things that are just so out there and has magical powers. And King Friday, the more you watch him, you realize he's really kind of OCD and control freak. Everybody has their strengths and weaknesses, and in this land of make-believe, they had to work with each other. And Henrietta Pussycat, a lot of people, if I've heard one negative, people say she drives them nuts. I can see that. I've just learned that that's how she talks. And she is a little bit histrionic, and she struggles with insecurity, but she's accepted. See, if no one on the show ever had any problems, I'm getting another good thought, there would be no show, just like most things on TV. Unlike Hollywood that solves it in 1 hour or 2 hours. Oh, wow, he was a sociopath. He lied to her. And at the end, oh, now he's a good guy. Now we can trust him. Yeah, no, that's not reality. Most couples, if they have, people say, well, if you don't have a problem in the relationship, then there's no movie. That's right. The problem is the solution, which is so fake. Yeah, look at some of these things like Sleepless in Seattle. They meet each other through a radio talk he gives. And it's a kid who flies across the country to bring them together, and somehow just by that's not reality. Or you've got mail. Okay, so they lie to each other, or he lies to her, and it's this fake relationship. Yeah. So what is being modeled to us here? Mr. Rogers, on the other hand, these people still had their problems. Henrietta Pussycat makes changes along the way, but she still kind of struggles. I can identify with that. Progress, not perfection. And that's a 12-step saying. And but the basis is that people in the land of make-believe are accepted and loved and valued, even with their problems. And it's okay to show the emotion with King Friday, who wants to do his thing, and you see eyes roll. Actually, you see the puppets kind of go, okay, and the eyes roll like, oh, he's going to give us a lecture. We didn't really want a lecture, but we'll go along with it because he's King Friday. And they have to say, correct as usual. It's just how it is. And then his wife, Queen Sarah, different lady, helps temper that. Yeah, no, very insightful show. very insightful. And I think it's therapeutic. So I'm going to encourage anybody who has an interest to watch it, to read the books. I'll list the books I've read or partly read, and and we might do a second show on this of how to put some of these principles into practice. I'll kind of finish with this: is when I've tried, I'm going to be myself for sure, but to emulate Mr. Rogers, to try to be more present emotionally, to slow down, to acknowledge happy feelings, comfortable feelings, and unhappy feelings, and to model how to do that in a functional way, not perfect, but more functional. Like Mr. Rogers got some of his anger out in with clay and piano. Is that the best way? Well, it worked for him. But this now, if I don't really try to connect one person to another and show love and appreciation, I feel like I'm moving towards shallowness. And I just don't want to live life like that. And coming full circle, when you hold a baby in your arms and the baby has done nothing other than be born. That's all the baby did. And the mother and dad worked so hard to bring the baby into this world and through hardship and labor. But it shows you we love the baby because the baby exists. The baby has value, and we sense that. And then as they grow, this disease of needing to be okay by doing something or performing, which is good. We can clap and say, oh, that was such a beautiful ballet recital, or you did well in sports. I'm happy for you. But to not give that I love you because who you are, and to be bold enough to break past this barrier. I think it's a spiritual force that keeps this barrier between us, that isolates us, and to not talk about what we value in people. I think, well, we'd be afraid of being misunderstood or embarrassed by that. But I think, I'm now 60. Life's short. I'm not going to care what people think as much. So anyway, I wish you a wonderful day. That sounds like Mr. Rogers. And I'll see you again, God willing. Take care, dear friends. Bye-bye.